Mandatory vaccinations in schools are a bit controversial, but what if a choice you made for your child could harm someone else's child? That's pretty much the scenario and the subject of today's book for Wednesday's Read. So joining me now to talk more about this is book critic Gwen Reyes. I do that all the time. And we're talking about the book Keep You Safe.
Yes.
Today, this is a fiction.
It's fiction,
Gwen?
so it makes it a little bit more palpable to kind of digest. Okay. But what I loved about this book, it takes place with two moms, one who is a single mom of a 5-year-old who is very sickly and cannot be vaccinated against measles. Okay. And then you have another mom who's in the same class, who has another child in the same class, who is a mommy blogger and refuses to vaccinate her child because she doesn't believe in the science.
Interesting. So one wants to but can't. The other is choosing not to
and can.
Okay.
And then, of course, as it does for dramatic effect, both of them get sick. And there's lawsuits going on between the schools, between the parents. It gets really, really dirty and awful. But at the end, it does have a happy ending, which is nice. But I just thought it was really controversial and a really topical situation because I think parents are always dealing with this choice of, do I do what's best for my child, but also what are the questions that I have to ask about the actual long-term effects of this?
Well, what's interesting is also you talk so much about parents are thinking about what's best for their own kid, but their decisions clearly have impacts that reach far beyond their own family, their own household. And we're talking about lawsuits too.
Yes, lawsuits and death of a child. Like, there's a whole bunch of things in here that I think people don't really think about when they're like, well, I'm not going to vaccinate my kid because this is about my family and my decisions. But those decisions have so many effects on the community and makes it terrible for people who want to make better choices for their kids.
I'm wondering how much of this book touches on sort of parents and their responsibilities and them perhaps fighting the mandates also that are coming from the school districts and the schools themselves.
Yeah, and this book takes place in Ireland, so the rules and laws are slightly different, but that's definitely something that is brought up in the book, where the moms are both kind of dealing and grappling with the decisions they made, but they're very adamant about the decisions that they made. So there's something they can do about the past choices. They have to move forward from there.
You know, describing this when we first started the segment, we used the term, you know, a parent's worst nightmare. And I'm wondering, it seems very plausible what we're talking about here, even though this is a fiction.
Yes, and I think there's something completely relatable because a few years ago we had an outbreak in Fort Worth of a measles outbreak. It was very similar, where you had a combination of those who could be vaccinated and their parents choosing not to, and then that affecting and getting the entire school and church that hit too.
So quickly, I'm wondering, will parents read this book and feel that there's a clear resolution here, or do you think it'll leave a lot of folks still sort of unsure of what to do when it comes to getting their child vaccinated?
You know, that's such a great question, because I think when you have a book that's a novel versus something that's nonfiction and always heavy on facts, you get that human element to it, which I think makes it more relatable for people who maybe don't really necessarily want to just read facts and read studies and all this. With it being a novel, you can kind of have that element of humanity, which I think makes you kind of think in a different way.
Even talking about young kids too.
Yeah.
All right, Gwen, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Really fascinating book there.